Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inspiring Women Summit. This is Devaa Haley Mitchell. I'm the Summit founder, and I am the host of this year's sessions. Really happy to be here with you all today and with my very special guest, Caroline Muir, someone who I had the pleasure of meeting personally a number of years ago, about 10 years ago actually, when I went on retreat with her to learn all about Tantra and the whole world that opens up once you dive into it. So I'm really excited to be here and to share her with you all. Before we dive deeply in with Caroline, I wanted to just let you know that if you are interested in owning recordings of all these sessions, you can do that by going to inspiringwomensummit.com/upgrade. Again, inspiringwomensummit.com/upgrade. And there you will see the options for purchasing the recordings so that you can listen to these sessions in your car, at home, have the transcripts, and really be able to take all the wisdom here that much deeper by listening again and again. So if that's of interest, please do check it out. All right, so let me tell you a little bit more about Caroline and the session today we have that is called Living a Turned On Life. Caroline Muir is an internationally celebrated Tantra yoga educator. She's also a best-selling author. She is known as the Queen of Modern Tantra. She has written 2 best-selling books. One is called Tantra Goddess, a memoir of sexual awakening and Tantra. The second is called The Art of Conscious Loving, which she wrote together with Charles Muir. She founded the Divine Feminine Institute for Men and Women in 2004, and now it has transformed into an organization called Divine Feminine Awakening. She draws on her expertise as a practitioner of the tantric and yogic arts with 45 years experience as a practitioner of Hatha Yoga and 25 years as a teacher of Tantra Yoga. So most of you who know anything about Tantra at all have definitely probably heard of Caroline Muir. Perhaps you have read one of her books, and now you have the wonderful opportunity to be with her in person and on video. So we are very excited to have you. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you, Devaa. Happy to be here.
So I just wanted to start out with asking you, as this is the Inspiring Women Summit, about your own personal inspiration for diving into Tantra, and perhaps you can also share what is Tantra for those people who might not be familiar with the term or with the whole art as you practice it.
Thank you. Tantra is a yoga. It started off several thousand years ago in India as one of the yogas. And it was a yoga that was made available to young people who were coming together in arranged marriages, who were meant to be together for the rest of their lives. Marriage wasn't based on love in those days, it was based on arrangements. So the young people were taught about their sexuality, about their sexual organs, about the nature of sexuality, that it was a gift from God, and it would always be shared as a gift from God. So people went into the bedroom and went into their sexual lives at young ages, but they were prepared about this energy and the sacredness of it. And I would say that's probably the biggest missing piece for many of us today, especially if we're on a spiritual path, is that we lose that connection to spirit and spiritual path when we go into the bedroom for this thing called sex. Because sex comes with a lot of expectations, a lot of insecurity, a lot of goal orientation, and very little of the yoga has remained. So that's what got me so excited when I first heard about it, because I knew as a 42-year-old woman at that time, 25 years ago, that I really needed this. I needed something to deepen my experience of myself with my own sexuality. because I was playing as many games as the men were, and jumping from relationship to relationship, and really not understanding the sacredness of sharing my body with another. And that's all changed.
Well, one of the things I remember learning from you, and I really appreciated about the whole practice of tantric loving, was really, first of all, that it is treated as a practice, and that the entire encounter from the beginning is really set up where you're thinking about the ambiance, you're thinking about the intention that you want to set, and how do you create sacred space. And I know one of the things you do is even teach people about creating sacred space, and really is honoring each other as embodiments of the divine. And perhaps you could just share a little bit of the practices for those who might not already be practicing Tantra that really help people shift. I feel like there really is a shift from treating it as this sacred art, as a practice, as opposed to, you know, something that just happens as a quick activity late at night between the sheets. Really a whole way of being, really, with your sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a path. It's a choice. It's not a religion. It is a choice to live one's life with one's beloved, who is yourself or another, with a sense of the sacred, always entering in. The way you touch someone, the way you touch yourself, the way you look into the eyes of the beloved or the partner, when you're moving into more intimacy. For me, what Tantra gave me was that foreplay really began on the yoga mat, in the experience of breathing and centering and connecting with myself, and then somewhere half an hour or so down the line from through the yoga postures, we would open our eyes and behold the beloved. And from there, we would move into the bedroom. And so foreplay became a prayer to God, of gratitude for one another, and for this amazing energy that our Creator has given us, called sexual energy. And I think where this really fits in with what you all are doing is that, and Tantra is a buzzword that has been so already misaligned here in the West as the new version to fast food sex. The version that if it's Tantra, then you can have 3 or 4 partners and it's spiritual. And I have really had my eyes opened wide about all of that. And I've shifted a lot of my focus from being a Tantra teacher to being a sharer of sexual consciousness. Because until we help one another shine more light of consciousness on our sexuality, it's still going to happen in the same old way. And the same old way works. It creates life. It can feel good. But there's so much more that the, of course, wise ones from the ancient schools have passed on to us. So that's what Tantra is for me, is the yoga of loving and intimacy.
I think you're bringing up some really important parts, Caroline, where you say it's become sort of the fast food. I notice I have myself explored with some different teachers, and there are some Tantra teachers where it's really all about just having the longest orgasm possible, or multiple orgasms, and there can even be sort of an orgiastic kind of component. Yes. And I have to say that I've been pretty disappointed, and in fact, I wasn't disappointed when I said with you, but with some of the other teachers I've explored with, I felt disheartened and sad because the deep sacred element that originally drew me is missing a lot of times from what is being served up as Tantra, and it feels like the soul is hungry for a feast and a meal, and a lot of what's being served out there at times feels more like eating white bread that doesn't have any nutrients. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit, what's happened, and how do we regain those ancient threads where the sacred really is present, and maybe you could even offer a few practices for people who are wanting to approach Tantra from
Okay.
a deeper perspective.
Yeah. I certainly don't know, Devaa, why it has happened, but anything to do with sexuality and sex has, up till now, really been dragged in through the dirt. And the dirtier it was, the sexier it was, and people like you and me have really been turned off by that, and we've known there's something more. So where I am focusing with all of my teachings and my work with women or couples is on the something more. And once people get that they're carrying around a lot of baggage that we inherited from our culture and sometimes from our families and early experiences, that isn't really what this movement is about. And it is a movement. It is the shining of consciousness on sexual energy and sexual sharing and how it can be heightened between lover and beloved. So one of the ways that we can begin to look at how we view our sexuality is to feel into how do you feel about your own body? How do you, each of the listeners, how do you really feel about your genitals? Are they sacred? Were they created by the same God that created, let's say, all the love in your heart? Because really they were. And we tend to go through life giving them two assignments. One, sex or arousal, and the other, elimination. It all happens in the same area. So the dirty part and the dirty jokes and the whole historical attitude about sex and sexuality and women is really changing now. It has to change if the Western woman is to bring about a great healing to the planet, and I believe she is, because she's willing to step into her power now and say, no, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do things my way, and here's my way. Let's slow down. Let's honor the God and the goddess in one another. Let's open our eyes and look at who we're doing these pleasurable things with and honor them. And for just a moment, I would ask the listeners to place your right hand on your heart and bring your left hand over your second chakra or genital region. Doesn't have to be right on it if you're not in a private enough space, but let's let the hand on the heart and the hand on the genitals or near them. Let's go inside with our eyes lowered. And let's take a big, deep breath. Because we're talking about a subject now that is not aired publicly enough. And let's take a big breath of the love that's in your heart and fill the hand that's over your heart with that love, the very hand that would touch the pink cheek of a newborn or pet a little puppy is now on your own heart, and that love is streaming down the left shoulder and the left arm and into your genitals. There's a blessing going on right now. You're taking the love from your heart and you're imagining it moving down into the genitals and flooding them with the essence of love, the essence of beauty, the essence of gratitude to your Creator for having given you the ability to feel. And sexual feelings are natural and human. It would get pretty dull without them. So to honor them as a great gift and place the hands over the heart and the genitals as a morning practice and an evening practice. When you crawl into bed and your clothes are off, and you just rest the hands here so that the heart of love and the genitals of love can begin to find each other through your inner practice. the inner journey of awakening consciousness in the sexual center. So when I speak of a sexual consciousness with a hand on the genitals and the love going from them and to them, there's a chance for consciousness to awaken. And with the deep breath, up into the brain comes this consciousness. Every chakra has it. Every chakra has consciousness, not just the brow center. So here we are having a little exercise, thousands of us together, or however many are on the program, and it's really safe. There's nothing wrong with this.
As you're saying this, I can really, I'm feeling my heart in my hand right in this moment, and I can really imagine that this is something beautiful to do with yourself, but also really I can imagine doing this with a partner as well, and just with the eyes open. And I know that I have found, and I'm imagining probably many of the women on this summit as well, that the pathway to my own sexuality and sensuality really is through my heart. And so the more I can feel loved, first of all, connected to the eyes, loved, celebrated, and cherished, and that I can love and celebrate my partner as well. And the love channel is open first for me, then the sexual channel opens. But if we try to just go first for the sexual channel, it doesn't go so well. So
I know.
What you're sharing, and just
a great practice for couples is to start with each of you taking turns giving to a hands-on and eyes open to the heart and the genitals, and maybe say a prayer to them, or maybe a big beautiful compliment of how much I appreciate the energy that you put into me, that you share with me from this part of you. We don't speak to them. We expect them to perform and do their job, but we don't make a connection first. So what you said is exactly what my favorite thing to teach people.
I think it seems too like a big piece is really at the foundation is about communication, and just having the space to really communicate and clear. I had a joke with my husband Stephen that years ago when we first got together, that before we could be really intimate, both of us needed to cry first. And almost sharing what are all the things in the way, because I could literally feel my body wouldn't open if there was something on my heart or something that was in the way between us. And so in the first while of getting together, there was often, something.
I love that.
And then I would share my truth, and then it would often open up his truth. And it used to be a little bit of a process, I'll say, and sometimes even an ordeal to get to the point of actually being really physically intimate, because there was a lot of clearing and withholds and soul sharing and misunderstandings or whatever it was between us as human beings that I actually needed to clear before I could feel totally open in my body and willing to receive his energy into me. And it's different now because we've been together for almost 14 years. But at the time, and there was even a question are we going to be able to get to a point where we can just be intimate and not have it have to take so long and such a process and so much clearing? But I think maybe you could just speak to that, because it felt like the communication piece, if it doesn't happen, often can really not create the space for the heart-to-heart and the true intimacy that really is what most of us are longing for, deeper than just a great sexual encounter. It's intimacy that we really are wanting.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear it from you, because people respect you and they look up to you, and you're spiritual people. And that's what people need to have transmitted to them. The words that turned me on the most was, and still is, when my beloved says, "Come, honey, let me hold you and tell me what you're feeling."
How many women out there can relate to this? This is what we want. We just want to snuggle, darn it.
And another good place for women to be in is enough in their power that they can say, "When I'm ready, I'll let you know." And we'll begin the sexual exchanges and practices that we know we like, but I need to talk first, and I need to feel heard. And if a man can give her that, and touch her, and just listen, and be patient, and not in a hurry, he's liable to get everything and more than he's fantasizing about, or needing, or desiring. And it can't be a game. It's got to be sincere.
Now, you just brought up a really important thing. You just said not being in a hurry, Caroline. And I'm wondering, because one of the challenges with our world right now is that everyone, not everyone, but many of us are so busy and pressed for time. And to really engage in this tantric practice does often take time and slowing down. And so how do you, it suggests people navigate the realities of a busy life with the kind of the feminine body's need to have time and space to open, and how do we reconcile this situation that we're facing in the modern world?
It is a situation, and it does need reconciling. And again, that's the work that I'm teaching women in my private practice, and when I do the seminars, which I don't do very much anymore, about keeping their own Shakti alive. So some of this requires just when you're sitting at the computer, or you're brushing your teeth, or you're brushing your hair and getting ready for bed, is squeezing up on those inside muscles, the ones that run through the genitals, and making a practice of turning yourself on, if for no other reason than to have a good night's sleep. It doesn't have to be, I'm turning myself on for him. It can be, but being turned on is the kind of the name that I've given to my speaking these days, is living a turned on life. Doesn't mean I'm having sex very often, because I don't have a lot of time either. I've got a lot of interviews to do, and writing to do, and books and projects, but I like the feeling of being turned on. And it's those internal muscles that really help. And massaging of the sacred spot is another thing that really helps women stay alive. Otherwise, everything kind of wants to go to sleep, because we're not having a lot of hot or juicy sex because we're tired and it's the last thing at night. So on my yoga mat, I keep my little wand and I do a little 10-minute massage to myself internally, not to orgasm, not for any other reason than because I know it's good for me to keep that part of my body awake. And especially as we get older.
Thing to add to someone's morning practice, whatever meditation practice they might have, to do a little internal organ massage as part of it.
I would add that, absolutely. People in the nutrition business know that sexual energy keeps us young. They're not talking about it that much, but look at any 70 or 80-year-old who's being sexual. Playfully sexual. I don't mean seriously sexual, but playing with that energy. They look younger. They feel younger. They're not as tired. And in 10 minutes, you can play with some sexual energy or Shakti energy and not have to have it go all the way. It can go all the way when you have a couple of hours on the weekend, or when you go on vacation for some people. I totally understand the dilemma. So I make it part of my practice to be still, to be quiet, to breathe, and to remember the core of me, and not forget it or expect him to remember, because he's busy too. And I put my hands on him so he remembers that he's alive and well, and it doesn't have to go anywhere. I love you, honey. I love you just the way you are. Rather than these weeks that go by where we don't touch each other, or we don't look at each other down there because we don't want to give the message that we want to have sex, so we ignore that part of our beloved. And it needs to stay healthy. It needs to stay alive. And it doesn't have to take hours and hours. And it's not quick, fast food sex either. It's a loving moment.
You just mentioned something that I think is also really relevant for our listeners, which is about our aging bodies. And you said that you look younger and feel younger when you're doing these practices. I know that a lot of our listeners are women in their 40s or 50s or older. And for those of us that are in those older years of life, or not that old, but our bodies are changing. How else can people really keep that energy alive and that feeling of being turned on and vital as our bodies are changing? You mentioned using a wand, which maybe you could just say a little bit more about that for people who aren't even familiar with the terminology, like a few exercises people might do to really keep that Shakti life force alive through the years.
Yeah, the wand, the crystal wand, it's on my website. It was created 25 years ago by a woman in one of my courses, and she created it. It doesn't look like a dildo. It's a very lovely looking thing, actually, and it's made out of lucite, and it's a perfect tool for massaging the sacred spot or the G spot, women with women. And if your fingers can't reach that really easy to reach area of the spongy tissue, and I encourage women to become educated about this part of your body and keep it alive. It's like, don't let it go to sleep. There's a beautiful story about the Shakti of the feminine that has been slumbering for several thousand years. And it is waking up. She is waking up. She is an essential energy, the feminine, and in her power, that is waking up. And we can help her and help ourselves stay awake because there's so much consciousness in the chakra. Massage it. It's not just on the external clitoris, but inside, behind the clitoris, where all of this storehouse of power is sitting there wanting to wake up and play. And that doesn't mean you're going to run after your guy to have sex. You can take care of it. It's an energy that you utilize by breathing it up into your brain, into your heart, and then doing your interview or writing your next chapter or getting the kids off to school because you have more energy.
So this is a good alternative to the coffee or frappuccino or whatever it is. Do your own morning inner juicing break.
I know that it works, and I've had to learn it for myself when I was no longer with a partner who took it upon himself to want to keep me alive and juicy all the time. I had to learn it for myself, and one of the great gifts of being alone was that I had to learn how to keep myself alive and well. And I am aging, and I have lost a lot of my libido. And so it's not about I'll do it if I feel like it. It's about I'm going to do this for myself because I need my energy to be active and vibrant and playful. And more play needs to happen between couples. It doesn't really have to be more sex, more play, or sexual play, playing with each other's parts and hearts and eyes and tongues and playing before we go to sleep. Or when we wake up, when our breath is bad, we just go for it anyway and play a little bit. And then say, okay, I love you, I got to go now. A long day ahead. But we tend to have all or nothing sex, Devaa, and that's the part that I'm passionate about teaching people to play more.
I'm curious, you've mentioned him a number of times, and I'm imagining that some of our listeners perhaps have partners that are women. And I'm wondering if it's how different it is in your experience of the kinds of sexual and tantric activities that are interesting to same-sex couples. If there's women listening who have a female partner as opposed to a male, is there much difference in terms of how the sexual relating happens, or the kinds of tantric practices that might be enlivening for a same-sex couple?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. And I've always wanted to have more same-sex couples or lesbian women in my courses. It just hasn't happened. But I would love to teach them more about the sacred spot massage and the gifting they can do for one another in addition to the sexual play they do. But there's a lot of storage. It's a storehouse of anger. It can be a storehouse inside of our yonis of hurt, of times in our lives when we felt not respected sexually or as women, and to bring healing to each other as a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, or a man and a man. It's a part of sexuality that is missing in the marketplace. It's starting to take a hold more and more because Tantra is growing since I first started teaching it. And there's more and more teachers now, there's more practitioners, and people you can actually go to for this healing work. And you want to be able to trust them. You want to be sure of who you're going to and the school that they studied with. But I'm thrilled at the quality of the people who are graduating as teachers, as certified tantric educators and practitioners of this work.
Can you speak a little bit more about the healing aspect? Because I know that that's been a big part of your own journey as a sexual healing piece, and I know it's been profoundly important to a lot of your students as well. So maybe you could share some details of how that looks and a little of your own journey perhaps as well.
Yeah, great, I will. So why would you need sexual healing, and what is it? Well, it is stepping out of the role as lover, if you're a couple, or in close friendships. We're not going to be lovers, we're not going to be sexual with each other, but do you know the practices of sexual healing? I feel like I could use some of that. The last man I was with left me for someone else. I've been having a lot of, or let's say the stories are many, many, many for women. I've been having a lot of vaginal infections. I've been afraid of about having hysterectomy. I've had 3 kids now. I mean, there are so many dis-eases that are rampant in the world of women. So, and for men, it's more the heart. It's more heart disease and prostate cancer as well, by the way. So there's practices for the men that are very valuable for women to know. In partnerships, you can give so much longevity to your man by taking the time to explore him in a healing, loving way through touch. And him and the man or the woman with the woman as well, because this is a chakra, this genital region that has problems. If the energy isn't circulating and we're sitting at the computer all day long, it kind of goes south, and there's no energy there, and then suddenly we're not feeling very sexual, and then we start having some problems, and there's just too many problems that don't need to be problems. If the people who care about us, our partners, and ourselves would be willing to give loving touch to the area of our body called our genitals. Kind of the land of the lost country. I mean, if you're not having sex or urinating, then what are they doing? They're just in the way. And I think that's the part and the awareness that needs to change. Because being on a spiritual path and being a spiritual person has a lot to do with being aware and conscious. And let's not forget about him and her down there.
Is there a story that you'd be willing to share with someone that you think would be comfortable with having their story shared about what opened up for them, or the kind of healing that's possible for people when they begin to engage in these practices on a deeper level?
Oh, there truly are thousands of stories, and I've listened to many, many, many of them. One story that remains with me strong is a woman that called me. She found me on the internet. She knew my name. She knew I was a Tantra teacher, and asked me for a discovery call, or a few minutes on the phone. I said, sure. And she said, Caroline, I've been just so wanting to tell someone this. I'm 81 years old now. I'm still a teacher of Kundalini Yoga. I live back east. And I've taken on a lover in the last year. And he's in his 70s, and he's written many books on Tantra Buddhism, and he's a very learned man. But she said he's been doing something with my yoni that I've never had before. And I'm wondering if a lot of women are knowing about this. He massages my G-spot or my sacred spot. And he does it with such tenderness and in such a sweet way that I'm having a sexual awakening like I never had as a younger woman, because men did the things that men like to do, and it was never this. And I said, well, I assure you I'm doing everything I can to spread the word. And if women don't have partners or lovers who are willing to spend the time massaging them internally without the goal of getting them off, but simply to put love in to a deep cavern of passion and pleasure. I said, may I tell your story without using your name to others who are interested? And she said, oh, please do. I so want women to know how this has changed my life before it's all over, whenever that's going to be. But she said, I feel like I'm still going to be around for a while, now more than ever. So I love that one, because we get older and we think we're not having a lot of libido or sexual desire, so therefore it must be over soon. And for the men, when their sexual energy begins to wane and they're tired and they don't get erections that easily, what can they do for the woman that's easy and pleasurable and very fulfilling? And it brings a lot more intimacy to the couple to have these exercises to do with one another.
So one of the pieces that I hear from my students, I'm not a Tantra teacher, but sexuality is woven into the work that we do with the sacred feminine. And one of the pieces I hear often is that there's a real challenge for people just around communication. Women communicating with their partner about what they enjoy or what feels good in a way that doesn't feel bossy or demeaning. Not saying slow down, but
exactly.
How can we communicate with our partners? Because it can be a challenge, or it can even be a place where people get into power dynamics, and yet at the same time, as an empowered woman, you do know what feels good, what your body's responding to, and so how can you give that kind of feedback lovingly to a partner to ask for what you're wanting, or let them know you are pushing too hard, or you are moving too quickly, in a way that can really be heard? Because I know that's a place that I've heard many people get tripped up, and then it can turn into a mini fight in the middle of what originally was to be a sexual encounter.
Yeah. And you gave the perfect example, which is the one of slow down.
Right.
It's too much pressure. I can't take it. And there's nothing worse than making your partner feel wrong. So how can a woman change the way she asks for what she wants? Well, how about, oh, sweetheart, I just love it when you go so slow that you're almost not even touching. And he goes, slow? You mean like this? And you go, no, let me put my hand over yours and show you how slow to go. And if we say it in a sort of a sexy, turned-on way, we will get more turned on by what they at least want to try to do. Because men really, really do want to please us. I've never met a man that didn't say, oh, I just want to make her happy. And they don't know what soft and slow and gentle is to the extent that we do. So we kind of have to show them, maybe by kissing their hand in a way that shows them how soft and slow a tongue can move, or placing your hand over their hand when it's inside on your sacred spot, and say, now, if I were inside of you, how slow would you like me to enter you, and how gentle would you like me to be with you? That's exactly how I feel. Oh, that's perfect, honey. Now, yes, yes. Oh, perfect. And sort of empower them as they go into the journey of learning. Because a man does want to pleasure you, and he will usually touch you the way he touches himself. which is much harder and faster than we want to be touched, right?
Or the way that they're viewing it. I mean, however you feel about it, the reality is quite a lot of people are watching pornography. It's really rampant.
Oh God, it's ruining everything.
And it's usually it's pretty intense and fast, and so I think that unfortunately is the way a lot of men are being, and women, everyone, are being educated about sexual interaction, and it often is not not loving necessarily, or not sacred, but certainly not slow. And so it's
right. Thank you. I mean, one of the things that that makes me even more passionate about teaching what I teach and being as visible and audible as I possibly can, and having opportunities to speak to people, because we have to counter that energy of porn that's still the multi-billion-dollar business for sex. And we know, you and I know, that's not where it's at. But we need to get people's attention about sexual energy and sexual loving and arousal and play, and open up their mind and open up their world, and catch them when they're young if we can. Well, because the young ones are learning it all on the internet.
Right. You also just said something about opening people's minds, and I thought you might just say a few words. I know one of the things that you talk about is Amrita and feminine ejaculation. And just as you're speaking of blowing people's minds, for those who aren't that familiar with it, I thought perhaps you could say a few words about that. And of course, people want to learn more, they can dive in with you, but just to share a little bit about what is Amrita, and how does that process open up for women through sacred play?
Yeah, great question. The Amrita was taught to us by the ancients. The translation of the word is divine nectar. The modern sex experts would call it female ejaculation. I've learned to have such a sacred relationship with my Amrita, and whatever amount, whether it's some or none, might come forth during a lovemaking session with myself or with my partner, that I don't have any problem with treating it with respect, but every woman does have the potential to release large amounts of a watery-like fluid. It comes out through the urethral opening, not through the vagina itself. And it can come out very fast. It can just flood. It can squirt. It can flow. And it often happens to women when the G-spot or sacred spot is being massaged. It feels like urinating. And it's almost that really good feeling if you've been holding on to getting to the bathroom for a little while, and then you finally sit down and relax all those muscles and you begin to urinate it. Oh, it feels so good to finally release. So releasing the Amrita for women is very similar. And often in sexual arousal, women get very full. We feel full, and we often will stop and say, I think I need to go to the bathroom, rather than just letting go. And we need to be with a partner that says, I don't care what it is, let it go. We probably, knowing women as I do, need to know that there's a couple of towels or a waterproof pad beneath us. Otherwise, we're going to worry about wetting down bed. And none of us want to sleep in the wet bed. So being prepared is great. And they sell, the crib sheets for babies when their diapers leak. It's the same thing women put under themselves when they at least want to see if massaging their sacred spot and arousing themselves, they might produce some of this fluid. The most important thing is to not push it, not try to make it happen. As soon as you try to make something happen like Amrita, she will often just back up and go, no, I don't want to now. Now that you're trying so hard to make me do it, I don't want to do it. Because she really is a consciousness. She's a wet energy of consciousness. And when she floods out, that may sound a little esoteric, but it is written about in some of the ancient writings that this Amrita, mixed with menstrual blood, was used as a sacred elixir for healing. And, you know, one makes friends with their bodily fluids, hopefully, in their lifetime, and uses this medicine to the highest purpose, for the highest purpose, which maybe there's something higher even than pleasure. And that's what got me to go beyond all the orgasmic pleasure I was having, Devaa, and into what is the consciousness that needs to be talked about here. Because I don't get on these interviews and talk about bigger and better and longer orgasms. I can, if that's the question, but I really want people to know that there's a great consciousness in their sexual energy, and the more you release it in a pleasurable way, the happier you're probably going to be. Yeah, good.
Thank you. I feel like there's obviously a huge wealth of information here, and there's much more that could be shared in a short period of time. So I want to give you the opportunity, Caroline, to let people know if they want to learn more about your work. I know you also have a free gift that you're making available to people. Do you want to share what that is, and I can let people know where they can find it?
Yes, please download the Tantra Pleasure Secrets. Devaa will tell you what the link is. But I worked very hard on that, that PDF because I really want people to get, in as quickly a time as possible, some of the overview of what this work is about and how we need to be reminded of the power of our sexual energy and our bodies. So the Tantra Pleasure Secrets has a lot of good stuff in it. Yes, back to you.
So you can get Caroline's Tantra Pleasure Secrets if you go to inspiringwomensummit.com/Caroline. Again, inspiringwomensummit.com/Caroline. We'll also post the link where you'll find the recording of this as well. And I want to just really thank you so much for your willingness to cover so much ground with us today, to open up a lot of very intimate material, and also just for the inspiration that you've been to me in this whole area of life. And the inspiration I know you've been to so many thousands of people of really taking the taboo out of this whole topic and really giving us a space where we can treat our sexuality as part of our wholeness, as part of our divinity, as part of our birthright for really expressing and loving in the most intimate and soul-filled way possible. So thank you for being a representative of that.
Beautiful. Wonderful to do this with you. Thank you.
Thank you.